So you mentioned ransomware, phishing. We have all seen the stats. The ransomware attacks has been on the rise. But one of the interesting stats that stood out for me was 75% of the time, the companies do end up paying ransomware. Is there a better way? And where are we heading with this trend?
Yeah, that's a very surprising stat for me as well, I have to say. So we see, first of all, I think in the news right now, if we look at the casinos, MGM and others are suffering a ransomware breach as we speak. And the more we pay ransom, the more we're fueling this system and giving them incentive. And there's never law enforcement involved, or hardly ever law enforcement involved, because they operate from other countries. So I think the solution starts much earlier in proactive security, in organizations really, first of all, investing in people, process, technology to think about how do we not get into the situation, and if we are infected, how does it become only something minor? Proactive, people, process, technology. Second, I highly recommend to do, and we do that, to do tabletop exercises where leaders from the management team are actually, and you take a third party and they do that, the big four all do that, and others, they have practices to do that, where they actually run a scenario and they said, you got this email. And it's from, and it says you got ransom or whatever, and we're asking for this, and you suddenly check out. Wait, who do you call? You call the legal. You also have to tell the PR department, because they're about to disclose stuff, because they also do a double extortion these days. They don't just encrypt your data. They also will release it to the public, and they'll release it in pieces so that you'll know that they have you have your information. And so when you do this tabletop, back to the ransomware, at some point it comes up that they're asking, their number, by the way, continuously rises. That's how they work. It's a reverse negotiation, but you suddenly find that, oh my God, there is a number, and again, the business people, the financial people, they tend to think, okay, I'm beginning to quantify this, but I have to alert you that a lot of these attackers are operating from countries that are sanctioned, where you're not even allowed to transfer money they can be in Russia, they can be in Belarus, and others, and there's also like different types of attackers where you pay them and it doesn't go away, or you pay them and say, oh, our key didn't work. And so I think it should be a plan D, paying ransom and recovering that way. It's much better to be prepared, both proactive security, both tabletop exercises, so you know who's doing what in such a scenario, and how do you recover? Plan on recovering fast without dependency on paying ransom. That would be my general advice. Of course, there have been situations where it's the pipeline, right? The gas stations are not working, where it's healthcare information, and we've seen hospitals, unfortunately, be a big part of victims of ransomware attacks, and it gets to machines and whatever. That's life or death. Definitely, there's merit in paying, but I think it should be option D.